The pay TV industry has gone through transformative changes over the past number of years. We have seen an explosion of new entrants in the over-the-top space, like Amazon Prime and Netflix. Consumers expect to view video across multiple devices, from mobile to plugging Amazon Fire Sticks into the TV. We have witnessed significant improvements to the fixed and mobile broadband, available to consumers across many regions, meaning video can now be delivered without a bespoke network. There has also been a fundamental change in the role of video for many operators in the industry, where companies that were traditionally pay TV providers see revenue and profit growth come from broadband and mobile rather than TV. So what are the implications in this fast-changing environment? I am joined by Mick McCluskey from Enghouse Networks, who will offer insight around how operators are reacting to the developments in this space and where the industry is going. Welcome, Mick. Could you please tell us more about yourself first?
Yanni, I'm a VP Product Management at Enghouse, and for the last several years, I've built and deployed and run a TV as a service business we call SBL TV. And today, our TV as a service platform is deployed to over 60 operators. We serve millions of devices across multiple countries. And through the process of building and operating that business, I've interacted with many different service operators from different contexts. And through that engagement, I've gained insight for what they're doing, what they're finding as they go through the type of transformative change that you described in your introduction. So I'm very pleased to share with your viewers today some of the insights, some of the learnings, some of the observations that those operators have seen in this very fast-changing environment.
So first of all, what are the general trends you are seeing in the pay TV industry?
I think one of the fairly major changes is that TV is changing in terms of a pay TV business. What would have been perhaps the lead service for many operators, pay TV operators, is now becoming a secondary service as they focus on other areas like broadband, like IoT, and like mobility services. The challenge for them is that TV is becoming increasingly complex, it's becoming increasingly cost challenged, and focus on that is drawing away resources from those other areas. What that means in practice, what we find is that that is causing a transition in the industry and is probably the primary reason why most operators are now looking at TV as a service as the primary way in which they deliver TV solutions. The reason that TV as a service is important for them is that it offers a simple solution, a low technical risk solution, a cost-efficient solution, meaning that it can drive profitabilities with predictable costs solution for them. And that's now becoming the standard offer for their TV deployments.
Some commentators are talking about whether traditional pay TV operators even have a future. In some markets like the US, there are traditional cable operators which are reinventing themselves as broadband companies. For example, Cable One Sparklight. Do you see such dynamics in your business?
So absolutely, I think we are seeing a significant shift in the priority and the importance of pay TV for many operators. And many operators are definitely going through a strategic review of pay TV and the role of pay TV in their overall service bundle. I'll share a little anecdote that I think is relevant and important for this. One of the interesting things that I've seen over the last number of years is that ISPs or internet service providers are starting to adopt and deploy pay TV for the first time. ISPs are traditionally companies that focus on the delivery of broadband services to consumers. And when I ask them why they're getting into TV, they offer me two reasons. The first reason is that they believe TV is a profitable service and adds incremental revenue to their overall offer. The second reason, and this is perhaps more interesting, is they believe TV drives additional penetration for the broadband services. We've worked specifically with one ISP that saw a penetration plateau at about 30% of their available footprint without TV services. We worked with that operator, they deployed TV as part of their bundle, and they found that they could increase their market penetration from 30% to 50%. So that really tells us that TV remains an attractive and sticky service for consumers. And I think that's something that operators need to think about strategically. So, of course, operators make their own decisions. They have their own context, their own strategy that they define. But we think that TV still retains its position as part of a package if the operator can deploy it in a manner which is simple, low technical risk, and commercially makes sense.
That's very interesting to hear, and we are seeing more and more consumers viewing content on apps rather than set-top boxes. What are some of the developments you see in the app space?
You're absolutely right. Consumers are consuming lots and lots of different things through apps, whether it's on mobile phones or on other devices. And I think if you're thinking about a next generation TV solution, you absolutely have to deliver content on applications, because that's the way in which you give consumers what they want on the devices and on the situations and scenarios that they want to consume it on. The challenge for operators is that although applications are very simple for consumers, it's not necessarily the same simplicity on the operator side. The challenge are there are multiple different app stores. iOS and Android dominate the mobile environment, but in a TV environment, you also have Roku, Amazon Fire Sticks, Apple TV, Android TV, and so on. Each of these app stores also may have multiple operating systems. There may be multiple devices with different form factors. There may be different interactive modes, and new devices, new interactive modes, new OSs can be introduced on a fairly regular basis in those environments. App stores also drive policies, and to retain your position on an app store, you need to stay up to date with the policies. Otherwise, an app store may reject your application. So, although this, from a consumer perspective, is critically important in terms of driving TV consumption going forwards, it really adds complexity and cost for an operator. And of course, cost and complexity are things that operators really don't want to be looking at in terms of a pay TV service. So one of the things we've done as part of our TV as a service solution is integrate the App Store updates on behalf of operators. That means that we deal with all of the cost, the complexity of updating apps on app stores, and the operator takes advantage of the simplicity and the low technical risk of the TV as a service solution.
So we touched on the pace of change a few times in this interview, and you mentioned the need to continuously evolve the offering. But what does this entail?
The pace of change has one of the things that has fundamentally changed the TV industry, and it's become an enormous challenge for operators. There are multiple implications of the pace of change, but I wanted to touch on three areas that I think are critically important for operators as they start to react and participate in this environment. The first really area is that as you deploy a TV solution, you need to think about the TV solution being capable of changing. In the old days, maybe 5, 7, 10 years ago, you built a TV solution and you possibly didn't touch it again for the next 3, 5, or 7 years. The challenge is today, and we've just spoken about applications, the TV solution needs to change on a continuous basis. That means that the software that underlies the TV solution needs to be capable of reacting, adapting, and changing to market change environments. It also means that the processes, procedures, and personnel involved in the operation and delivery of those TV solutions need to be available to update and upgrade. So the first thing in terms of this new flexible, fast changing environment is really the infrastructure and the people, and the way in which to deliver TV solutions needs to be capable of changing very rapidly. The second function is around analytics. Again, in the old days, TV operators had very, very limited visibility of what was happening with their TV service. They had very limited view of what was happening both on an operational side and also in terms of how consumers were consuming the content. What we find now with IP-based delivery is that operators have a very deep insight as to what's happening, both in the operational side of TV delivery and also on the business side. On the business side, things like what are the top shows, the top channels, what are the bottom shows and the bottom channels, which devices are consumers consuming content on, which services are consumers using for consumption of those services, how many hours are viewers watching the service. With this type of information, operators can start to look at trends. They can look at changes, what's happening. Are people consuming more TV or less TV? They can start to look at the impact of campaigns. If I ran a promotional campaign, did it have the desired outcome? And that allows them to react and adapt based on what they see. The final thing is really around user experience. User experience really is the set of things associated with how the consumer interacts with the TV service. And this is critically important in this fast changing environment. In Enghouse, with our SBL TV solution, we have an in-house UX design team, and they spend their entire time focused on both what are the new apps, what are the new devices that are coming out, what are the new interaction modes, what's happening with the technology trends, the business trends, and the consumer behavior trends that we need to incorporate within our solution. But they also reach out directly to the consumer base, whether that's through operator surveys, whether that's through usability studies. Take all of that information, including information coming from analytics, and factor that in and build it into the fast changing TV environment so that the TV service that we offer is always relevant for consumers.
That's all very interesting. And we also discussed the dynamics of the pay TV industry in the present. But where do you see things going in the future?
I think if we had a crystal ball, then it would be a very useful thing to have. Unfortunately, nobody so far has found that crystal ball. What I can talk about in terms of the future is there are some trends, some indicators of areas in which investment and innovation is likely to occur, and I'd like to touch on a few of those. The first is in the area of advertisements. Advertisements have been around on TV since TV was first conceived. However, in recent years, advertisements have been changing significantly in terms of how they relate to the pay TV industry. We're seeing the advent of free ad-supported services, TV services, or FAST, they are called in the industry. We're also seeing the way in which advertisements are brought to consumers changing to reflect more the internet paradigm of ad insert rather than the traditional pay TV services. The internet paradigm is much more about targeting ads, and targeted ads are more valuable for advertisers because it means that you're targeting your advertisement towards a consumer base that's more likely to consume your product. But it's also more relevant for consumers because you're finding things that may be more useful to you. The second area that I'd like to touch on is really around the way in which there is interactivity with content and the way in which content innovation may occur. With the new IP-based delivery mechanisms, all sorts of new capabilities may be possible. And what we found in technology generally is once a technology platform enables certain features and functions, innovators and entrepreneurs build on top of that to find interesting and innovative ways to drive extra value. And one of the areas is around interactivity. We're seeing in the UK, for example, one of the public broadcasters, ITV, is working with LG to provide interaction for a TV show. So what they do there is they place content into that TV show, and then consumers can find the content and make purchases. Now, I'm not suggesting everything is about advertisement and content purchases, but what we are seeing is with an ability to interact with TV, we should start to see new and creative ways to create more immersive content. Building on that thought, we're also starting to see interesting areas around what is called metaverse, or the interaction across multiple different modes of interaction between consumers and content, whether that's virtual reality, augmented reality, or other forms. And again, I think there can be innovation, significant innovation around those areas. Finally, in terms of the way in which consumers consume content, there has been very significant change in the last number of years with the advent of OTT providers like Disney+, like Amazon, like Hulu. What we're finding going forwards, however, is that from a consumer perspective, you're starting to see stacking of subscriptions, which drives up cost. And you're also seeing fragmentation of content where you can't get the content from one source, you have to go to multiple sources for content. So I think one of the things that this industry has to struggle with is how to make the situation simpler for consumers, where they can find the content they want at a price point that makes sense for them in a manner that's very simple for them to find that content. So lots of change happening in the TV industry. I think the one thread that I think is true, if we look back over the last number of years, we've seen the pace of change has been very fast. I expect over the next number of years, the pace of change to continue in its very fast changing environment.
Certainly there are a lot of developments in the pay TV industry, and we'll be very excited to explore them in the future. Thank you very much for your insights, Mick.
Thank you, Yanni.